Yo, what's up, everyone? It is the Beast. Welcome back to the channel, The Beast Tom. We're going low-key tonight. It's a late-night vid. We are just past midnight. It is now Wednesday, April 28th. I was just outside smoking a stogie because it's a beautiful South Florida night. No humidity, nice breeze. One of the last nights like this until God knows when, October. Sipping on an old-fashioned here. Smoking haven't had a cigar in a long time. It's been a while. But smoking my favorite brand of cigars, a CAO Flathead. Highly recommend. Such a good smoke. And I was just reflecting on the day here. And the big news of the day, at least in my circle of things I care about, is the big announcement about the future of the Batard show. And if you missed it, you can go find Greg Cody's article in the Miami Herald, the Wall Street Journal article. I'm sure it's all over the place now. But basically, as I understand it, the Batard show signed a deal, whereas DraftKings has become their title sponsor for $50 million. That's unheard of. It's ridiculous. I can't even tell you how ridiculous that is in broadcast terms. I don't know exactly the relationship, and there's a lot of things to get into, but it just, and I think as I learn more, I'll do more videos and try to break it down from you from a radio business, podcast business, media business standpoint. That is my forte. Actually getting a degree in that. It's that double MBA media management degree I'm in the middle of getting. That's kicking my ass. But I thought I would just reflect on the amazing story that is the Batard show. By the way, if you see my face, if you hear my voice, just subscribe to the channel already and hit the thumbs up thing to tell Google, hey, let other people find this video, and then also hit the bell over there so in case you want to get more of my videos, and always follow me on the socials at Miami Radio Beast. I would change that handle to be like something else, but if I change it, I lose my blue check mark, and the hell, I'm going to lose my check mark. It's all I have anymore. So, I just want to tell the story of the Batard show, because I think it's great. But we got to go back before the Batard show. And you have to understand, when you think about traditional sports radio markets, South Florida actually, with WQAM, was one of the biggest as far as sports radio goes, one of the legacies. I mean, the first sports radio station, all sports radio station, was WFAN in New York. And then you had other big ones, the Mighty 690 out in San Diego, with Hacksaw. You had what eventually became WEEI in Boston. The Ticket in Dallas has always been huge. Detroit, Philly with WIP. These are the legacy sports radio stations, right? And I don't know when WQAM, I should know this, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't know when WQAM went all sports. I know they got the Heat, I believe, when the Heat started in 88 at some point. But before that and through that, you just had random sports talk shows on the AM dial, whether it be on 610 or 940. You had Sonny Hurst doing a show, and Hank did a show, and Defo and Mad Dog, and all these guys that were down here and around here did shows, and then WQAM became an all sports station, and it was actually one of the top sports radio. When I started working there in 1997 as an intern, it was one of the top sports radio stations in the country. It was actually like a honor and a privilege at the time to work at WQAM. By the way, I interned with Stu Gatz. It was like the three main interns at WQAM at the time were me, Stu Gatz, and Mark Eisenberg. And we interned on Hank's show. Hank's show had 2 producers and 3 interns. That's how it went. But, and just to show you how, and by the way, the funny thing is, WQAM was located in the rat-infested, bug-infested trailer park studios that were literally right there where those lights are, at the corner of Palm and Sheridan here in Broward County in South Florida. So I actually live now right next to where WQAM was, which would have been convenient 20-something years ago. But at the time I lived in Kendall, so not so convenient. Kendall's like, 30 miles away. Many a late night, early morning on the turnpike. So WQAM starts all sports, builds up a big lineup. The original first team, Hank Goldberg. Actually, in the middle of the day, they had Rush Limbaugh on, so it wasn't really all sports. You had the Fabulous Sports Babe was on there. You had JT the Brick. You had Pharrell. You had syndicated programming, that sort of stuff. And but it was, as far as sports radio stations go, it was one of the legacy sports radio stations. And it was that way through the 90s and early 2000s. In 1997, also, WQAM got Neil Rogers from IOD. Good night, Zach. Had to say goodnight to the kid. And that obviously made a huge difference. So now you had, the first team with Goldie, Defoe, and Joe Rose. Then you had Neil Rogers. Then you had Hank. At night, you'd have, at 6 o'clock, you'd have either sports or various hosts. Then you had Eddie K, 10 p.m. to the last game ends. Ed Kaplan would go into the last West Coast game would end because of gambling. And it was great. One time I boarded up the show, there was a Dodgers game that went till like 4-something a.m. It was amazing. And that was the juggernaut of a station. And then sometime in the early, what it was, 2003, somewhere around there maybe, is when Stu Gatz, who interned with me, he had gone from WQAM, he had gone to, I think it was either 610 or 940 to do a show. And then ended up partnering up with a rich dude, Joel Feinberg, and they started 790 The Ticket. Under an LLC, Primetime Media. And what they did was, what Stu Gatz got this rich guy to do was spend like $2 million to buy time on the frequency that was waxy, 790. And basically what they did was they bought 24/7, 365 for a year, or however how long the contract was, for a couple $1 million. So Stu Gatz conned that guy out of his money, but he ended up being a crook, so I don't blame Stu Gatz at all. Got to keep the stick lit. So the ticket starts, right? And I'm working at QM at the time, and we didn't really think much of it. The lineup in the beginning was back and forth, up and down. People were leaving, coming, going, whatever. But in the afternoon was Dan and Stu Gatz. But when the show first started, and I wasn't a fan right when it started, because I remember turning it on in the early days and thinking, this sounds horrible. It's just two guys that seem uncomfortable with each other. Stu Gatz was driving the show as opposed to being the wacky sidekick, and it just didn't really work well, and I tuned out. And then I would tune back in maybe a year or two later, and I didn't get the show. At the time, it was just two guys laughing like little girls, and I just didn't get the show. But maybe like year 2, year 3, they found a groove. Hawk came in to produce the show, and they really found their groove. And basically, as I was sitting at WQAM doing my work and doing updates and producing all the Kane stuff and all that stuff, I'd be listening to Dan and Stu. while I was at WQAM. And the show just got better and better and better. And the Ticket improved their lineup. And it became a formidable foe. And I remember, this is how old this is. So, Zach Krantz and Joe Rose left WQAM to go to the Ticket. And I remember IMing on AOL Instant Messenger Zach Krantz when their books came out and saying, you guys got 0.0, like, are you sure you made the right move? Or like, we were, I was joking around because at the time, we're pulling off ridiculous. Neil was getting 10s, Hank was getting huge ratings. Of course, it was all bullshit because it was just the diary thing. And listen, I could go into that, but the Ticket wasn't doing anything. QAM was still kicking their ass. But eventually, it started to become more of a competition because Dan and Stu found their way and their show started to become really something that got the buy-in of the audience. And in order to have a successful anything in media, you have to have audience buy-in. You just have to. You have to have legions. You have to have people that adore you. It has to be almost like a cult, to be honest with you, but in a positive way, not a negative way. I mean, before that, the show that had really done that was Jim Rome, right? Jim Rome was the person that had his audience trained, how to make calls, how to call people out, how to do this, how to do that, how to show up at arenas and sell arenas out with 20,000 people when Jim Rome went on a road show. And Lebatard and Stugatz kind of did the same sort of thing. Not in the same way, but a similar thing where they got the audience buy-in. And no one else was really doing that. It was a different kind of show. And once I got it, I couldn't stop listening. So Dan and Stu are kicking ass on the Ticket, and their ratings continue to go up. QAMs continue to go down, and the Ticket slowly but surely, despite QAM just trying to shove sports in your face, like we've got football and just football and more football and more football and football and football and football, and spending all like ridiculous money on the Canes and the Dolphins. At one point in time, having every sport except the Heat, just spending so much money to try to overtake the Ticket, and it just didn't work. The Ticket slowly overtook WQAM. So I left WQAM under interesting circumstances, and again, I don't know if I'll ever tell that story. In 2009, I was unemployed. And eventually I got to the Ticket in 2012. And Dan and Stu were just kicking ass. And I'd interact with those guys and started to get to know those guys. My best friend in the world, Allison Turner, obviously was kind of in the Lebatard circle, worked for Lebatard on and off, on the show, off the show, for Dan, just was in that circle. So I got to know some of the Lebatard characters through her. And once I got to the Ticket, I was so happy to be there and just so happy that, I got the show. I had been listening to the show, basically after Neil left radio, I think also in 2009, there was no other appointment listening in town other than the Lebatard show. Where were you going to be? At 3 o'clock when they came on the air, where were you going to be? You were going to be by the radio listening to Lebatard, or on the stream, or what have you. And so their show continued to kick ass. And then they get offered to go to ESPN, and Dan makes it abundantly clear to ESPN, and this is from not only my knowledge of the situation, having been there, but also, Dan telling the story, Stu guys telling the story, what have you, that Dan insisted that they stay in Miami. They're not moving to Bristol. They're doing their show. And they continue to do a local hour, so they continue to foster that South Florida connection in that audience, but also went national. And they took Miami and brought it national. And, of course, this is at the time of the Big Three and all this stuff, and the show took off. More than 200 affiliates around the country. And so already, this is a huge success story. And then they leave 790 and end up going to ESPN basically full time, still producing a local hour, but now moving to the studios in South Beach. And Dan basically got ESPN to build them beautiful studio, well, in a beautiful location, but studios on South Beach. And they dominated, right? And this is unheard of. Like, this doesn't happen. Everyone else has to go to Bristol, has to go to New York, has to go to LA. Dan said, no, we're staying in Miami, and we're going to make Miami a big part of the show. And then HQ's on TV with Dan and Poppy, and the Le Batard universe takes over ESPN. And then we fast forward. And through the years that they're at ESPN, I know a lot of the inside stuff. I'm not getting into it. That's not my job. But, like, Dan is unhappy, right? Dan values freedom and ability to be creative, and like a lot of us, doesn't like corporate overlords bleeping with us, and just got sick and tired of having the worldwide leader being in every decision. And there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff that maybe you didn't know about, and also a lot of stuff that you did know about, like the LeBron billboards thing that he put up in Akron. He got in trouble for. There was just a lot of stuff that Dan, that ESPN didn't like. And then, Dan had been unhappy, and then obviously they fired Chris Cody. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and they decided to leave ESPN. And that's really taking a leap of faith, because you're leaving literally the most successful, most historical, biggest platform in sports, arguably in the world. And you're doing it basically on a hope and a prayer. And they do that, and they don't know what the future is. And that is looked upon as most, traditional media people would be saying, what the bleep is, what are they doing? Like, why would they do that? The axiom is you don't quit a job before you know where your next one is. And they quit a job without knowing where their next job was, where their next paycheck was coming from. And that's definitely not the traditional conservative, easy way to do it, but that's what they did. And they became the pirate ship. And there was a pandemic during all this, and things got discombobulated. And no one, they didn't know, and no one knew what the future would bring. And, I thought maybe Dan would get his own channel on Sirius XM, and as we found out, today in all the articles, that basically Sirius XM made them an offer that would basically, in some circumstance, like, basically set Dan up to kind of replace the Howard Stern kind of thing, like be the top, if not one of the top, if not the top dude at Sirius XM. But again, you got to subscribe to Sirius XM to hear that show. And Dan was adamant in saying, I don't want people to have to pay for my show. So if there's no subscription involved, if there's no paywall involved, well, that gets out a lot of people. I thought maybe they'd go to Spotify, but that didn't happen. What they did do is get a $50 million title sponsorship from DraftKings. And it's just remarkable. It's brilliant. It's so paradigm shifting. It's a breath of fresh air. And basically what it does is it just gives the entire entity, everything that goes around the Le Batard circles. We're talking about Adnan and Amin and the Brockmire show and all the other entities that are going to be involved with Meadowlark Media, and there's a ton more to come, gives them the capital they need to do great work and make great content, but also does not tie them to one company. And what I think they're going to do is basically put them everywhere that they can, whether it's on the DraftKings app and DraftKings website and YouTube and Twitch, and find an audio partner, whoever that may be, whether it's terrestrial or not terrestrial. But basically, this allows Le Batard and friends and everybody to get paid and make great content and be creative without having a boss. Because DraftKings isn't really their boss, they're a sponsor. Now, I mean, at some point I'm going to get more details and break this down more from a sports media standpoint, which is my forte with that double graduate degree I'm getting in MBA in media management. But the way I see it is there's only a couple of ways that can hurt you, which is, obviously when you have a $50 million sponsorship with DraftKings, it's hard. Obviously, you're not picking up any other gambling-oriented sponsor dollars. So that category is shut down, which is fine, but just saying. And the other thing that is with that is if something happens to DraftKings, if there's negative publicity with DraftKings, if this DraftKings hits something, well, you have a problem. But I don't think that's going to happen. DraftKings is only growing. We find out that the Seminole tribe of Florida has made a deal. They're going to be able to open sports books, and it looks like they may even make their own deal with DraftKings. So that's just a ton of money in that sector, and a ton of money that'll be just flowing into the Le Batard and Friends circle to help them make great content. And the reason why I wanted to do this video is because as I was sitting out here smoking my stogie and drinking my old fashioned, was I was just thinking about how remarkable the story of the Le Batard show with Stugotz is. The story is just remarkable. It's I don't know, let's put it this way. I don't know how many people, or entities I should say, because it's not just Dan. It's Dan, Stu, the entire shipping container, Mike, and Chris, and Roy, and Billy, and Woody now. Love Woody on the show. And Jess, now that she's on the show. It's the entire group of people. But I don't know what entity can leave the best and biggest and brightest, right, entity in ESPN and end up doing better. Like, that doesn't happen. It would be like if... I'm trying to think of a good example. It would be like if, if Messi or Ronaldo, at the, peak of their careers, left their teams for, something else and made more money. I don't even know if that's a good example. It may be the old-fashioned talking. It would be like, listen, Conan left The Tonight Show and went to cable, and it may have been better for him, from a creative standpoint. I don't think it was better for him from a monetary standpoint, and I don't think it was better for him from an exposure standpoint. So I don't know if that move worked out. But it would be akin to leaving the height of heights and somehow finding a way to get higher. Does that make any sense? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, you're at the top of the mountain, but somehow you leave the top of the mountain and you're elevated to a higher top of the mountain. Does that, like, again, it's so not fathomable in the world, in the media world, to leave the top and get to a place that's higher than the top. And that's what they did. They found the unimaginable is what they did. And it's freaking amazing. So kudos to Dan and John Skipper and Bimmel and Gary Honig and everybody that's at Meadowlark for pulling off one of the biggest moves in the history of not just sports media, but media in general, because it's unheard of. It is simply unheard of. And the paradigm is shifting, and they're on top of it. And it's amazing. And they deserve kudos. So that's my late night rant. It's my late night thing. Hopefully you watch. Continue to watch. Subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social at Miami Radio Beast. And I'll see you when I see you. Peace.